Good morning, everyone. How are we? Amazing morning so far, isn't it? God's here and we can sense him close. Okay, so this morning I've the great privilege of talking about Antioch Network and sort of give you a little bit more of a clue as to what it is and also an update because Antioch Network has been running now for about a year. So October last year I came and I stood on the stage here and I expressed, what it is that this church and as elders we wanted to move forward in. So today we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be talking about the things that we've managed to achieve this last year. But I think firstly and probably most importantly, we recognize ourselves as a local church in a global church. Does that make sense? So we're local, we have a local expression, but we're sat within a global church and that we are the bride of Christ. And so when we see here amongst us and we look to our left and to our right and we see different people from different places, that's wonderful. What an expression. It's a great thing to be, that not everybody that is here is only from Shrewsbury, was born in Shrewsbury and always lived in Shrewsbury. It's fabulous that we're far more broadly spread. That's something that we've always wanted and that we've seen throughout our years. But equally, we believe that our church has a global expression. And so as an Antioch called church, that we should have an impact and an impression that goes far beyond just Shrewsbury and Shropshire and the UK. And that is one of the things that Antioch Network is looking to achieve. So, as I said, in October 2023, I came and I stood here and we talked about, well, what does that mean? Well, one of the primary drivers is that we're a church that believes in mission first. That we primarily are a church that is on the front foot, that we go out, that we do evangelism, that we have things like Christianity explored here locally. But equally, we look to do things that are well outside of Shrewsbury, Shropshire, the UK, and that's where we are. So if we can go to the next slide. So the catch line really, and this is for those of us that have been in New Frontiers for a long time, this is not a new catch line, but it is definitely something that we fully believe, that we can do more together than we can apart. And so the key point around this is that we're looking to be in relationship with people, that we have a friendship, that we do stuff together, that when we combine not only resources but people and heart and skills and our love for God, that we can do more together than we can apart. We're a network. That's what I'm looking to build. We're looking to build a network, not a hierarchy, that it's going to be decentralized, that it's not centralized. So it doesn't just revolve around us or me, but it revolves around who Jesus is and what his plans are. And that's what we're looking to try and build. That sounds so easy, but let me tell you, that's really complicated. Because when we talk to our friends, so that's where we've started with our friends, that's logical. But when we talk to our friends, it's very difficult to articulate that we're equal, that it's a network, that there's no hierarchy. Just because it's me that goes doesn't mean that it's all about me. It's not all about me, by no means. It's not all about us as a church. It's not just because we have resources that it centralizes around us. No, not at all. The point is that we play our part within the network and we're looking to push out the decision-making to ensure that we work together with our friends in doing what we're doing. That is revolutionary. People that we work with do not understand what that means. They haven't got it. They don't get it. They love it. And they're attracted to it, but it's a learning curve, and it's one that we're growing and we're moving towards. That's really exciting, because it's not just about the person that has the money that goes and does the stuff, and therefore they're at the top of the pyramid. It's not about that. It's about Jesus and being part of the bride, being the global church, that yeah, we have some resources, but that we don't have everything. There's three primary objectives that we're looking at. We're looking to support and to plant churches. We're looking to train leaders, and we're looking at mercy ministries. Now, churches that are out there, churches that are our friends already, those that we're getting to know, we recognize that there are needs out there. There are financial needs, there is support needs, there are different ways of helping and supporting one another. And so they are looking and wanting support, just as we do too. There is also a great opportunity to plant new churches, and that's one of our primary drivers. When we go to different places, we really recognize that training is something that isn't available to all, and so we're utilizing the resources that we have. School of Leadership being a prime one, but not the only one. We're looking to use that in different places to train leaders so that they are competent in the Bible, that they are good leaders, that they have good moral standing, that they are doing the things that are of a similar value to that we would hold. And so that's key to it, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The other thing is clearly mercy ministries. Our church has been in the business of mercy, understanding what it says in the scripture for many, many years, both in this country and abroad. And so mercy ministries is one of the top things that we're looking at. Now, for some clarity, and for some of us, we know what Bread Trust is, and you've heard of that before. Now, I have the great privilege of running Bread Trust and running Antioch Network, and sometimes there's some confusion with us, amongst us. I'm going to try and nail some of that down today, although it won't be conclusive and it won't be whole. The primary reason the Bread Trust exists is that it is a way of adding mercy ministry into international spaces. The primary one that we've been in since about 1995, 96 is in Ukraine. And Ukraine continues to be of great relationship value to us. So Bread Trust continues to give mercy ministry benefit and aid, and you'll hear more about that in a moment, into Ukraine. Now, not only there, we've since grown into Zambia, I think since about 2015 or 2016. Where we do boreholes and all sorts of other things, foundations for farming, chicken runs, etc. We're not talking about that today because that is Bread Trust wholly, whereas Antioch Network is about churches and relationships. We have relationships with our churches in Zambia, but then it's not the same thing. If you're confused, that's okay. Come and join the club, because so am I, and I lead them both. But if you want to talk about Zambia, we have our Zambian representative here today, and he'd love to talk to you more about that. But we're not specifically going to be talking about that today. It is complex, but they work together. Bread Trust and Antioch Network, they rub together, and they do more together, again, than they can apart. But as yet, we haven't got the full designation of what exactly everything is. That will come with time. Now, I'm a person that loves organization. That's what I do for a living. So this kind of cuts against the grain slightly when it isn't clear. But I've been clearly felt from God that it's not for me to define at this moment in time. And so let's just roll with it and let's see. Both are doing fantastic work. Both are complementing one another. They're not opposed in any way. So we keep rolling forward, and we've got some exciting stuff going on, both in Antioch Network and in Bread Trust. The driving force for this is, for Antioch Network, is relationship. Relationship between leaders, relationship between churches. And you will have seen, even in this very church, over the last 12 months, numerous people standing on this stage, sitting on this stage from different nations, some of whom you've known and some of whom you haven't. That is purely through Antioch Network. And so when we talk about people like Karen from Armenia, we talk about Rich and Judy. If you remember, they came and sat on the stage. They're from the Middle East. We have expressions of them coming here, but there are others that you just are never going to meet. And that's okay, but we're going to give you a little bit of an insight into that, and for various reasons. So the primary thing is friendship. And so we've started with our friends. That's the logical place to start. But we're already meeting others that we haven't known for a long time, and that's really exciting. Again, we're going to come to that in a minute. The other thing, though, is that we really believe that there's a prophetic edge to what we do. The reality is we could walk into many different places and we can easily and quickly build relationships, and people will want to get to know us, and there will be a slight clash of culture because they will want money or they will want resources, but actually what we primarily want is friendship, and that has already started to happen, and that isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing because it helps us really work out, well, what is it we believe? What is it to be a church in the global church, in we all being the bride of Christ? So as part of that, one of the key things that I felt was that we needed to set up a prophetic hub. So we now have people praying for Antioch Network, praying for this church, the ministry of this church in Canada, in South Africa, and a number of people in this country. We meet regularly and we ask them to pray for us because, again, where are we going? What are we doing? How are we building what we're building? All this stuff needs to have a prophetic edge. And so we've been doing that quite well. The illustration, I guess, if we can just go to the next slide, of the complexity in Ukraine particularly, is that some churches have said, because they're friends of mine, I know the leaders well, that they're really excited about Antioch Network, and others, they don't know it so much. The relationship isn't so strong. And so what you can see here is that there are some churches in the yellow that are both Antioch Network and Bread Trust, and then there are others that are currently just Bread Trust, and that's okay because we see that across the piece. Igor, who is the leader there, he looks after a number of different churches, all of these and a number of others in Ukraine. He's really excited about what we're doing. We're in really good relationship with him. I speak with him almost weekly, and we continue to move forward with that. I'm going to have Anna, who's going to come up in a moment. Anna, as we took the gift day last year, we had enough money so that we were able to employ somebody one day a week in term time, and that's Anna. She helps me beyond what I can express. The reality is we wouldn't have made anywhere near the amount of progress that we have made if it wasn't for her. And so I'm going to invite her now, and she's going to give us a little bit of detail around Ukraine. Come on. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Phil. So I'm going to speak about Ukraine, and then after that, Phil will talk about a number of other countries. In Ukraine, the war continues. And the depths of need are ever increasing. Russia continues to move forward, take ground, great costs to both sides. Internally displaced people within Ukraine are moving east to west constantly in different waves. The churches we're connected with, the network Phil has spoken of, are endeavouring to provide emergency support and spiritual support for refugees who often are moving without any notice, without food, their homes, their friends, their family. Many leave most things behind as they have to move. So I'm going to give some updates, first from talking about the Bread Trust angle, and then moving to the Antioch Network relationships. Now, the work, obviously, as Phil's explained, overlaps because it involves many of the same leaders and churches, but it has a slightly different focus. So first to Bread Trust. Financial support via Bread Trust for humanitarian aid is actually slowing, but we still have some income from external donors, both in the UK and in the USA at the moment. Bread Trust provides funds to help run a variety of humanitarian projects. So I'll name just a few of these and we'll see some photos. So they're running a soup kitchen in Kyiv, humanitarian aid centres in Kyiv, Kharkiv and Kropyvnytsky, and also a newer project which is the accommodation support for refugees. So the church in Kyiv, who are central to the distribution of aid, acquired a new warehouse last November. So if we just quickly go back, Matt, to the previous one. So there's a photo here. the warehouse as it's been finished and begins to be used. So there was a specific pot of funding given by a donor in the USA, which was directed towards this new central warehouse. This has helped to store and organise aid in a really orderly way to enable streamlining of distribution and delivery where it's needed. In Kropivninski, the church identifies families from amongst the hundreds they see each week who collect aid, who they feel have the greatest need, and they provide one-off assistance with rent payments for accommodation. So that's the next slide, just an example here in the city. So this aid, this financial support, this gift that they give, helps families with the start-up rental costs, either for the first 1 month or 2 months, while they then find a way to pay their rent ongoing. This style of accommodation project has been replicated now on a smaller scale in Kharkiv and Kyiv, and may also be extended to other cities in the future. So moving on to look at the Antioch network now. Churches are going really well. The maturity increases with new refugees arriving weekly. A new church has been planted in Kharkiv last month, which is astonishing due to its proximity to the Russian border and the front line. There are 3 Ukraine church leaders that are in the Antioch network: Igor, Victor, and also Joseph Todikash from Kharkiv. Seeing the need for church leaders in the Ukraine to be supported in a more one-to-one way, Phil has introduced some of these leaders to church leaders, pastors in this country. And this provides more support for these pastors as they have a specific identified UK supporting church. In some cases, actually more than one. So I'll give some examples. John Cook from King's Church Eden in Penrith is connected with Victor and Polina from Kyiv. Polina visited the church in Penrith in March this year, and she shared about the work the church in Kyiv is doing. The Penrith church is offering support to their leaders, their elders, also their worship leaders. John Cook from Penrith, he met Victor in Hamburg. Victor was not able to travel to the UK. He had some travel restrictions. His wife could come, but he only made it as far as Hamburg. John Cook from Penrith went out of his way to meet Victor there in Hamburg, face-to-face, to encourage him and to support him. The Penrith Church has also supported them financially with a few specific identified needs. John Davey and Tim Wyatt from Gateway Church in Leeds are connected with Igor and Tanya Bogomas and Moses and Elena, based in Kropivninski. The 2 churches, so the church in Ukraine with Gateway Church Leeds, they connect online for a weekly prayer meeting. They've been doing this for many months now, every Sunday evening. The spiritual and emotional impact on Igor and his team of listening to people's stories through the humanitarian and social action projects is taking its toll. So Gateway Church is committed to prayer and friendship. This is key. This is really important for Igor and his team, and it's a really valued relationship. Paul Mogford from King's Church in Cockermouth is also linked with Igor and is beginning to get actively involved in supporting him. Dave Atkinson from Silk Life Church in Macclesfield is connected with Joseph Todikash from Kharkiv. Joseph actually visited the UK in September this year. He spent a few days in Shrewsbury, spent time with Phil, followed by a week in Macclesfield, building that relationship with Dave Atkinson there. And also Les Wright from Freedom Church in Chester is connected with Vitaly in Vasilkiv, which is near Kyiv. Vitaly spends most of his time on social support for the poor, and he responds really well to that prayer support from Les in Chester. So these are just some examples of some of the connections built so far. As part of the Antioch network, the Ukraine church leaders have also been involved in meeting together in conferences in different locations, in many different countries at different times across this last year. Meeting together for fellowship, teaching, spiritual support, and encouraging one another with other leaders in the network. So we continue to look to build those relationships. Sometimes it's online meetings, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes we're organising conferences for them to meet in suitable locations. So we're just really looking to support those church leaders in any way we can. So I'll hand it back to Phil now to continue the update.
Thank you, Anna. So we're really excited about what God's doing. We see it, don't we, when we read the Bible, that when places are under pressure, God does amazing things and some astonishing things. So just a couple of things here. So in the middle there, we've got Victor and Polina and little baby Mia. They've been trying for a baby for 10 years. And yet, recently, this year, they've had baby Mia. And so God is blessing people in the points of great tribulation. Iga and Tanya's eldest daughter, who incidentally got married the year before last, so in wartime she got married. They now have twins, and they moved back to Kharkiv. If you Google Kharkiv, it's basically bombed flat. And yet these people who are in their mid-20s are so brave and feel so called that they've taken their babies back to this bombed-out city. Why? To be a part of the church, to be a part of what God has in those spaces. And that is the very place where we are also planting a church. They're not in that church, they're in a different church, but there is a need, and so a church plant is happening as we speak. So in the point of war, yes, there is great hardship. There's terrible things that are happening. People are dying, people are being maimed and worse. But God is on the move too. We're seeing churches replenished. We're seeing people added. We're seeing people saved. We're seeing babies. We're seeing weddings. It's amazing as well. I need to keep moving at pace because we're going to be running out of time. There's so much more that could be said. Next slide, please. Kenya. We're doing a great deal of work in Kenya as well at this moment in time. So you've got Nairobi sort of middle bottom, and then a bit higher up you've got a place called Bungoma. And just south of there is a place called Mumias. We have had a church in Bungoma for a little while. That church is led by a guy called Fred Asore, who you'll see a photo in a second, but don't move yet. He is linked in with us. We're doing good stuff there. There's a church going on. There is also School of Leadership, which has been going on amongst students, where also other church leaders have come to it in Nairobi. And so they've been getting training to be effective and better leaders going forward. The exciting news is that in Bungoma, we needed to relocate his church, Fred, that is, his church. So let's go to the next slide. So in the summer, they started praying about it. They needed to leave because the lease was up on their land. And to be honest, their location wasn't brilliant. So we were discussing it, and I encouraged them to make a move to a better location, closer to the university. A lot of what they do in that church is evangelism through sport. So actually being closer to the university is of a huge help. They have 3 identified leaders, soon to become elders. So the picture there, you've got Pascal, Fred, and Barnabas. It's also called Barnabas Church Fellowship, just out of interest. Apparently that was before they knew us. I'm not sure if that's exactly right or not. But incidentally, the one elder is called Barnabas, so which is wonderful, isn't it? So that's great. Let's go to the next slide. So it's gone from being a measurement out plot to this building, this tin building. And the interior, this was last week. There was a service that was held there. It's not finished, but it started. And this is part of the question. And we can't really go into this today, but this is one of the wrestles that we are having and that I have, and that God really has been speaking to me a lot. And to be honest, this is a talk in its own right. But what does it mean to build sustainable churches? That's the question, right? Because in Kenya, in rural Kenya, like Bungoma is, which isn't that rural, but it's rural enough, to have a church that looks like this is not the answer. Equally, for us to have a church like that is not the answer. But what does it mean? So what does it mean to be sustainable and relevant to the culture that we're in? And so we're looking to wrestle with that, because it isn't just about piling in pounds into different environments. It's about working out, right, what's sustainable. What we don't want to do is build churches that always need the umbilical cord back to us. That is not what we're about. We're not a hub and a spoke. We're a network of churches. That means that for different churches in different places, it will mean different things. But what it does mean is that we have similar vision and similar values. And that's the primary thing that we're working on at the moment. And so I'd love to come back and talk to you about that another time. But if you imagine the wrestle, so we don't want hierarchy, we want an equal piece. We don't want a hub and a spoke, we want a network. How does that work in places with great need? It's a really interesting question and one that we wrestle with constantly. Next slide, please. So we have a School of Leadership. It's been going for the best part of 2 years. In December, they will be graduating School of Leadership. It's the same. Who's done School of Leadership in the room? A number of people? Yeah, hands up. There's a fair few people around, and others have done it as well. It's exactly the same School of Leadership. So I've been to Kenya listening to Martin Charlesworth speaking, amongst others, and in other places actually too. You're like, hey, Martin's here. Where is he? Well, he's actually sat at the back, but he's also in Zambia and in other places too, but he's in Kenya. So they've graduated that. We had a local church leader who wanted to come along, and the exciting news there is in December, I'll be going in December, we're going to graduate all of these students from School of Leadership, but equally we're going to commission them into a new church plant. You may remember, or may not, but when I was here a year ago, I was talking about a prophetic call to East African capital cities or significant cities, and that we were called to put churches into those places. This is the start of that. So these students, amongst another 30, are going to start a church plant in Nairobi, in the city centre, so everybody can come in. It's easier to come in than it is to traverse. So we're going to start it off, and I'm going to pray for them and commission them in December, as I'm also going to pray in and commission the elders of the church in Bongoma as well. So we're really looking forward to that. A little bit further afield, I'm just going to buzz through these things. We are looking at Near and Middle East as well. There are a number of different connections that we have. We'll come on to that in a moment. Let's go to the next slide. So you will recognize this stage, and you'll hopefully recognize this person. This is Karan from Armenia. He and his wife Linda were here with us in the summer. He continues to be a champion of Antioch Network. He is so passionate about it, so excited for it. He has many, many links, and he is actually of great use to us. There is, so if you can you just go back to the original Ukraine slide? So you'll see there is, that one. So you can see the asterisked out piece, which is the Russian occupied space. At this moment in time, there are 2 or 3 churches that are there that we love and support and that we know. They can't get into Ukraine. And so what we're actually planning on doing is organizing a conference in Armenia for them so they can get out into Russia and then they can traverse down. Last year, we did that for the first time. And to give you an illustration of how meaningful that was, there was a father and his daughter that had been split up for 2 years because of the war, and they met each other in Armenia. The whole place, by all accounts, was in tears. And this, again, is an illustration. So I really wanted to be there. For different reasons, I wasn't able to. But they facilitated. We gathered the resources, but it was facilitated and hosted by Karen. Igor was there. A number of other church leaders were there. We don't need to be there to facilitate it. There's almost like this FOMO, though, isn't there? Bit of fear of missing out, stroke insecurity. We all have it. But actually, God is doing something new and something afresh. Straight after that, there was, if you can go to the Turkey slide, we met, and I think you saw this picture on a Sunday morning. I am the giant. I'm not that big. It's like I'm a freak of nature. But really, I'm the same size as everybody else in the room. But anyway, so we met up in Turkey just after this other conference where we were able to meet. And we met a lovely couple called Yuri and Zoya. They're Ukrainian, but they're planting a church into Istanbul. And they're really, really interested in linking with us and us supporting them. So that's part of the discovery point that we're doing at the moment. Let's go to the next slide. So we have a website. It's linked to the Barnabas website presently. So if you want to know more about that, then please just jump on there. We're about to do a whole load of extra work on that site. If we go to the next slide, it's not about numbers, but just so that you get a feel for where we're at. So in a year, we've built these relationships with different churches in different places. And there are a number of others that we'll come to in a moment. I'm running out of time, so I'm moving quickly. Next slide, please. So timeline. So this December, we've got a couple of big things going on. I'm going to Kenya to pray in the church in Bungoma and also to commission and graduate the School of Leadership. We've got a conference that will almost certainly be in Armenia. It's not fully aligned yet, but it's likely to happen. We continue to have prophetic online meetings as well. If you're prophetic, if it's a gift that you know is yours and you'd like to be a part of it, why don't you come and speak to us afterwards? We'd love to make that bigger and get more and more insight. In February and on, we'll be having other meetings around and about because some of these people aren't able to make it to the UK. That's another point well worth making, is they can't come here for whatever reason. They apply, their visa gets revoked, so it's not possible. So we have a few things that we'd like to move to prayer, because the way that it lands here is sometimes you'll see the people, sometimes you'll hear the stories, but other times actually your connection can be in prayer. And what we'd love for you to do is to pray for us at this time, because I believe, and we believe, that what we're building is something that is very scalable, something that will be very big. We believe that God is blessing it, and it seems that the leaders that are being a part of it are really, really encouraged. So what we want from us as a group and as a church is to get that feel that, yes, we're local, we're a global church, there's many different nationalities and different people here, that's great, but equally we want to do the same out and about. I think what I'm going to do there is come up.
Thanks, Phil. Sorry, I didn't want to cut across you directly, but just as you've been preaching, I was speaking and filling us in. I was really led to this verse. In Corinth, there'd been lots of traveling leaders, and Paul was really involved in the church trying to sort things out. He sent Titus to them. And then he speaks of the Macedonian churches and their responses. And as you were talking about the way the other churches want to link with us, I really felt that it was almost like, like it was like what happened in the New Testament was just coming to life as you were telling the story. So this is, I think it's 2 Corinthians 8. Let me tell you, my dear family, about the grace which God has given to the Macedonian churches. They've been sorely tested by suffering, but the abundance of grace which was given to them and the depths of poverty they've endured have overflowed in a wealth of sincere generosity on their part. I bear them witness that of their own accord, up to their ability, even beyond their ability, they begged us eagerly to let them have the privilege of sharing in the work of service for God's people. They didn't just do what we'd hoped, they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us as God willed it. This put us in a position where we could encourage Titus that he should complete this work of grace that he'd begun among you. You've plenty of everything after all, plenty of faith and speech and knowledge and all kinds of eagerness and plenty of love coming from us to you. So why not have plenty of this grace too? And then later on it says in verse 14, at the present time your abundance can contribute to their lack, so that their abundance can contribute to your lack. That's what makes for equality. And that's what we're building here.
Agreed. Yeah, that's so true. I think for me that was so clear on the Sunday morning when Karen and Linda and Rich and Judy were sat on this stage, and we asked them to give us some insights to the Bible from their culture and from their perspective, because it was written in their space. So what is it that we miss? And they were able to elaborate on that.